well, we'll go ahead and gavel in here. That's the official gavel. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the City of Des Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Mel Pins, Chairman of the Board of Adjustment. This board has the power under Iowa law and the zoning ordinance of the City of Des Moines to hear and make decisions on requests for variances and exceptions from the regulations in the zoning ordinance, to review conditional use permit requests, consider appeals from any decision of the city staff in the administration of the zoning ordinance. The members of this board are citizens of the City of Des Moines and have been appointed to the board by the City Council. The board members are volunteers and receive no compensations for their public service. We have 7 members of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I'm going to take a moment now to go through and give each of their names. Our Vice Chair is Nathan Blake. We have Cindy Smith, Marlis Jones, Lynn Carlson, Dave Gare, and Justin Gross. And again, as the 7th member, my name is Mel Pins, the board chair. We also have a number of city staff that are assisting us today with this hearing, either technically or in assistance with presenting items. I'll introduce those folks as well here. Judy Parks Cruz is the city's legal counsel. Kay Smellick is the city's city clerk. Michael Ludwig is the planning administrator. Bert Drost is city planner. Joanne Donovan is the city's zoning enforcement officer. Tyler Hall is our meeting moderator. Dolores Brasenio is also a meeting moderator. Eric Lundy, city planner, and also Catherine Dostart, city planner. Now I'm going to take a moment here to go through our meeting procedure. Pardon me, for some of you, this may be the first time you've been in front of us. And for all of us, this is the first time that we're doing this through Zoom as well as the phone connection. However, for the most part, this is it's the same process we would normally do. So I'll go through here how the procedure works. First and foremost, this is an open public meeting. It is a legal hearing. The meeting is being recorded. The board members have each received a copy of the agenda and the staff recommendations. The board is required to base its decision on each item upon the criteria established by law for the type of relief sought by the applicant. The law applicable to each case is identified in the written staff report. If the fact, as determined by this board, demonstrates that the criteria established by law for granting the relief has been satisfied, then the board must grant the requested relief. Otherwise, the board must deny the relief. Each item will be announced in the order that it appears on the agenda. Items 1 through 8 are listed on the consent portion of the agenda. These items are not planned to be individually discussed, and they will be considered for either approval or continuance in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless the appellant does not agree to the conditions recommended by the staff, or if there's an individual or board member that requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda so that a full discussion on the matter can occur. And I'll come back to the consent agenda here in just a minute, and again, we'll help you through each of these items. After each agenda item is announced, staff will first give a brief overview of the appeal, and staff will present any written comments that have been received prior to the hearing. Then the applicant or their representative will be allowed up to 10 minutes to present their appeal. We will then move to what's called the public comment portion of the hearing. This is very important for those that wish to weigh in on the issue, either for or against. Anyone wanting to speak in support of, opposition to, or even in neutrality on the appeal will be allowed up to 5 minutes to present their comment. This will be their only opportunity to address the board during the hearing. This is our normal procedure as well, so there's nothing different because we're doing this through electronic means. At the time you wish to comment, You will need to please click the raise hand button, which will be at the bottom of the participants panel if you're participating by the Zoom app, or if participating by phone, on your keypad, press star and 9. The meeting moderator will then know to call on you if you've either raised your hand through the Zoom app or if you've pressed star 9 on your phone. And then when it is your turn, they will unmute you, and then your microphone will be live. Staff will take folks in order of appearance if they request to be recognized. If you choose to share any documents with us by PDF or images here during today's hearing that you did not provide staff previously, you want to use those in your presentation, you'll have to email copies of those for the record to the city staff to their email address, which is planning@dmgov.org. I'll go ahead and spell that, planning@dmgov.org. So again, if you have anything that you have not previously submitted that you want to use in your presentation, you have to email a copy of that to planning@desmoinesgov.org. Or I'll say that again, planning@dmgov.org. Once all concerned citizens have spoken, the board will then ask any additional questions of city staff. Finally, the applicant will be given 3 minutes for a rebuttal or closing comments if they choose to do so. The board will then close any further public comment on the agenda item, and the board will immediately deliberate the request and make a decision. Please note that it takes at least 4 affirmative votes for any zoning appeal to gain approval. And again, we have 7 members here. It always takes 4 votes for your item to pass. All speakers are requested to begin their presentation by giving both their name and address. If you're here as a property owner or a neighbor, you can give your place of residence or address. If you're here in a professional capacity as an architect, engineer, contractor, or attorney, you can give your business address. All speakers are requested to remain courteous and to focus their comments only upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law has been satisfied. Speakers are also asked to ensure they're respectful of time consideration, and if necessary, the board chair will limit further comments by a speaker if they exceed their time limitation. If your appeal is approved today, we ask that you wait until next week to contact the city's Permit and Development Center if you would need to obtain any necessary building permits. This allows today's decision of this board to be formally documented in the form of a decision and order. That decision order will then be provided to you as well as our city permitting staff. Any appeal that is approved by this board must be implemented, constructed, or otherwise utilized within 2 years of the date of the decision by this board, or such approval shall expire. The decisions of this board can only be appealed in the Polk County District Court. So if you believe you've been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the district court within 30 days of the filing of this board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the city council to change those regulations for future consideration. All material written or otherwise used today as part of any presentation will become a permanent part of the record and will not be returned. You may contact city staff after the hearing if you need a copy. We also ask that you keep your microphone on mute other than when addressing the board in order to limit distractions during the hearing that is in progress. So I know that's a lot of background, but again, our order for today and how we do the hearing, it really is the same as we would if we were all here live in person. So the first thing we're going to do is do a brief review of the items that are on our consent agenda for today. Again, for the most part, these items are being have been requested and city staff is recommending approval, subject to staff recommendations on items 1, 2, and 3, and then there was a request for a continuance on items 4 through 8. But what I will do here is I'm going to read through each of the items And if there's anyone on the phone or on the Zoom app that objects to the board granting permissions and approvals for any one of these items, please raise your hand or hit *9 there. And if you object to that item, then we'll move this to the regular portion of the agenda, and we will hear that agenda item in its entirety. So we'll start with item 1. Did you have something you wanted to add, Eric?
This is Bert Drost, Center for the City of Des Moines. I did have 2 things I needed to add at this time. The first is that item number 2, the appeal at 507 East Locust Street, Unit C. I do know there are several people on this meeting that want to speak in opposition, so staff will go ahead and move number 2 to the discussion portion of the agenda at this time. And then regarding item numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are the appeals from Lamar Advertising, they're on the consent agenda right now for continuation to the May 27th meeting. However, they want to have their appeals heard at the next in-person meeting. So staff is revising our recommendation to continue those 5 items to the June 24 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting now instead of the May 27th Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting.
Okay, Bert, I have just 2 questions on those as far as continuing it to the June 24th. You mentioned that the applicant would like it to be rescheduled to the, quote, next in-person meeting. While I believe the procedure is we have to have an actual date of how long we're allowing a continuance rather than an indefinite period. So I understand staff is proposing June 24th, which would be about 60 days from now. And I guess I do have a little bit of a concern. I wouldn't have a problem postponing this until that June 24th date. But for the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance, as well as the public's interest, I don't think I'd be interested in an indefinite time to put this off, because we may actually have to look at meetings of this type for some time down the line. Do you have anything you can add to that, Bert?
Well, I just would add that the reason we need to continue it to a date specific is so that we don't have to mail out new public notices. That's why staff is recommending the June 24th. If on June 24th we're still meeting virtually, it would be within the board's jurisdiction to say, well, we're going to go ahead and hear these items today virtually rather than continuing it again to a future meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, before we vote on these items further, then I think what I'll do here, and I know we kind of know who's here because they've checked in, but is there anybody here that wants to object to item 1, which is an exception request at 1175 10th Street? If so, either use the raise your hand function or hit *9. And I'll just ask staff, do you see any requests? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any. We've moved item 2 to consent, to the regular item agenda. Item 3 was an exception at 600 East 30th Street. Is there anybody here or a member of this board that objects to keeping item 3 on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, then again, as staff has mentioned, that items 4 through 8 related to a appeal of the zoning enforcement officer's determination related to Lamar Advertising. Staff is requesting and supporting a continuance through June 24th of this year.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Will Reesner is wanting to speak. I think he's having trouble raising his hand.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're going to allow anyone to speak if they're up for continuance or how that's.
If this is up for continuance, since we are all operating remotely, there's no one that's physically come down for the meeting. We can't really take testimony if we're looking at a continuance. I think staff has provided the reasoning, which is at this stage of the game, I would say is reasonable.
I think he was going to speak to the matter of the date.
Okay. All right. I think that I'll go ahead and allow that.
Hello, Will Reasoner, and I'm the attorney for Lamar on this matter, and whoever just chimed in is correct. I want to just speak on the date of the continuance. We have significant amounts of facts and testimony to present to the board on this matter, and presenting by Zoom obviously presents a pretty significant challenge just in terms of coordinating, with my witness, the staff for Lamar, plus presenting materials. And so we are requesting the next in-person hearing. We completely understand that is in flux. And so we don't have a problem on a monthly basis chiming back in and requesting, another continuance, if you're concerned about an indefinite continuance.
Well, Mr. Reasoner, it's Mel Pins, board chair. I would remind you that regardless of how much information or testimony you want to present in any hearing, you have 10 minutes to present your case for that related agenda item. So depending on how you will put together your presentation, no matter how large or small it is, it still only can take place within a 10-minute time frame.
Can you clarify, that's the 10-minute time frame per item, correct?
That is correct, but per item, you would want to be comprehensive enough per item so that we would be able to make our decision or evaluate that and then make our decision.
Understood. We would still request the next available in-person hearing. Thank you, though.
Okay, so I appreciate that. So I think what we'll do here at this stage, items 1, 3 have been recommended for approval by staff. Items 4 through 8, there's a request for continuance through June 24th. I'd like to hear if the board has any comments on approving the consent agenda, including the dates presented, and then if there would be a motion, and we'll take it from there. So we'll put our board members to work here. Go ahead and jump in.
Well, this is Cindy. I'll move to approve the agenda items, the consent agenda items, and moving the items to the June meeting.
Okay.
Mel, this is Dave. I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a motion by Cindy, a second by Dave, a motion by Cindy Smith, second by Dave Gear. Go ahead and do that. And then I'll have, I think Tyler from city staff will do a roll call vote here.
Yep, this is Tyler, city staff. Nathan Blake.
Aye.
Cindy Smith.
Aye.
Marlise Jones.
Aye.
Mel Pins.
Aye.
Lynn Carlson.
Aye.
Dave Gare.
Aye.
Justin Gross.
Aye.
Motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 passed 7-0.
Okay, so for those of you here for items 1 and 3, your items have been approved, which was an exception request. Well, they were all related to exceptions. So you'll get a copy of the board's decision and order next week. We appreciate you coming to the hearing. And for 4 through 8, we'll check in with you here in June. Okay, now, since we did have some folks in opposition to item number 2, we'll go ahead and start our regular portion of the hearing with a staff presentation and then testimony for a conditional use request at 507 East Locust Street, Unit C.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is Bert Drost, planner for the City of Des Moines. Item number 2 is a request for a conditional use that would allow for for use of a 1,249 square foot tenant within the ground level of the building for a bar use or for another use with sales of alcohol for on-premise consumption. The subject property is located within the building at the southeast corner of East Locust Street and East 5th Street. The tenant bay is on the north side of the ground level. It's currently occupied by the Jet and Monkeys Pet Shop, which is locating within the East Village neighborhood. The property is zoned DX2, which is one of the city's downtown districts. Here is a photo of the tenant bay as it appears along East Locust Street. Just another angle. And this is a more holistic view of the building. You can see there are 20 residential units on the upper floors of the building. They're all condo, so they're each owned individually. And then this is a view of the building along East 5th Street. Here's the floor plan that the applicant submitted. Again, it's retail base C. So if you can see where my mouse is, it is within this general portion of the building. North would be to your right. So East Locust Street is here along the right-hand side of the sketch. And I'll just quickly go through these next slides. I'll let the applicant go through them more, but they submitted these as some background information on the type of business selling alcohol that they're proposing. And again, I'll let Mr. Ogle explain these slides shortly. All right. And then the applicant was required to hold a neighborhood meeting as part of the conditional use process. He did hold that on March 14th. And the staff report was provided to everybody prior to the meeting. It's included here in case we have to reference anything. But staff looked at the criteria that the board's obligated to base its decision on, and we felt that the site does satisfy the requirements for granting the conditional use. It's a mixed use area with that contains a mix of commercial and residential uses, so it's not uncommon to have tavern type uses intermixed. We do feel that the 12 conditions recommended by staff should minimize any impact that the business would have on the surrounding properties and residents. I'll just quickly go through these conditions. Number one, they would have to comply with the liquor license obtained through the city and approved by city council. Two, the use would be limited to the 1,249 square foot tenant bay within the ground level of the building. Three, any sale of alcoholic liquor, wine and or beer by an other use with sales of alcoholic liquor, alcohol for on-premise consumption shall only occur accessory to a use that is permitted in the district. Or any sale of alcohol for off-premise consumption is prohibited. 5, they must comply with the city's noise control ordinances. 6, they shall not have any outdoor components such as a patio unless the Board of Adjustment grants a future amendment that allows for such. 7, they need to conspicuously post contact information for a manager or owner near the entrance of the business. 8, they shall implement a strict no loitering policy. 9, they shall not dispense alcoholic beverages from a drive-through window. 10, they need to provide litter and trash receptacles at convenient locations. 11, they need to comply with the building code. And 12 is the probably the most important one, that if the business would ever become a nuisance or violates the conditions set forth in the conditional use, the zoning officer has the authority to bring it back. Okay. Now I'll show you the consent map. We did get a few cards in opposition that are condo owners within the same building that the proposed use would be located in. And then we did get some cards and support. So I'll slowly flip through these cards, but while they're up, if the board has any questions for me, now would be a good time to ask them.
Okay. Any questions for Bert? No? Okay.
Do we know hours of operation?
This is Bert. I do not know what their intended hours are. I would defer to Lloyd Ogle on that.
Okay. That'll be a good question for the applicant.
How many? Another question, Mr. Chair. This is Cindy. How many clients can fit in this space? Is there a limit of number of folks?
There would be this is Bert with the city staff. There would be a maximum occupant load that's dictated by the building code. They would have to have that number posted within the business, but I do not know what that number is offhand.
Thank you.
Bert, can you remind us, you may have mentioned this, how many square feet is the general use? What size is it?
1,249 square feet.
Okay, all right. And they're asking for what's called a conditional use permit, which means if we were inclined to approve this today, if it's established as a business and we do have problems with noise or congestion or it's disturbing the general character of the neighborhood to a great degree, we can remove that conditional use permit and the operation would have to cease if it's brought back to the city or this board for review. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, that's the 12th condition that staff recommends.
Yep.
And that gives the zoning officer the authority to bring it back at any time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So we'll give Bert going once, going twice. Anybody else have any questions for staff from the board? Okay. Seeing none, this is good practice here for our other agenda item to come. So the first thing we do now is we have the appellant can speak. They'll have up to 10 minutes to present their appeal and their reasoning to ask for their conditional use permit. And we'll need the appellant to first provide their name and then their address. And again, they've got up to 10 minutes to present their case. So we'll go ahead and have staff turn it over to the appellant.
Okay, this is Lloyd Ogle. Am I speak now? Yeah, my name is Lloyd Ogle. I'm actually very I'm familiar to you all, but I'm actually, in this case, I'm one of the owners of the retail condo bay that's in question. The first thing I'd like to do is just apologize to Sam and Joseph, I think, are on the call with this whole COVID thing. It's made it really difficult to communicate with folks. But the first thing I'd like to point out is that whatever business goes into this site, the homeowners association, that business is subject to this declaration, and the homeowners association actually has to approve the lease. And they also have the ability through the declaration to regulate any business that's in there. And to the extent they can even ban the tenant or ban the patrons from the space. So I would like to, first of all, just point out that I think if there are any issues with any business in there, that homeowners is to be in a very good position to address any concerns well before they ever get to the point where they would get to the zoning officer. But having said that, real briefly, wanted to talk about the concept a little bit. When we first looked finding a tenant for this space, the original preference was try to just find a straight retail tenant, and I can tell you, it is extremely weak. And now what's happened with this pandemic I'm real concerned about downtown retail business. But having said that, we don't want to make it storefront. So we actually hired a concept designer in the hospitality industry to analyze this space and to come up with a concept that fits residential character and the historic character of that building. And the Stobray concept is that concept. And a few things I'd like to point out is that this business is specifically targeting women with discretionary income. And it's not going to be a bar. When you think of a bar, you would walk in and you would see bottles of liquor on the wall and you'd order your gin tonic or whatever. In this case, there is no bar. What you're going to have is specifically infused pre-mixed product that you'd walk in and you'd see rows of colorful bottles. And any of the drinks, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, all plate. This concept is a tasting room. It's not a bar. If someone stumbled out of Woolies across the street and stumbled into Dobray, they're likely not going to feel very comfortable in a space like that. It's going to be well lit. We think the seating for it's going to be 24 people. So it's not a large space. There's not going to be a large impact of people coming in and out of there that are going to cause problems in the neighborhood. We estimate we're going to spend at least $100,000 on build out in the space, and we're really confident that this concept will be a real winner for the village. Will be an enhancement, and the folks that live in the building will come to appreciate it. So there's a whole other round of conversations that I'll need to have with the homeowners association, the folks in that building. But I would just like to emphasize that quite a bit of ability of that homeowners association to regulate any issues that might come up with that space. But so, knowing that, going into this, we're extremely sensitive to these issues. The building's got super high ceilings. It's built in like the 1890s. And we do plan on having do some sound testing in there. And there's plenty of space and room to do some sound mitigation if done. But we're just real concerned that what we don't want to have is a vacant storefront. And by participating in the business, I think we can ensure that it's going to be a well-run business and one that's responsive to the neighborhood. In terms of hours of operation, public hours are probably going to be like 4:30 to maybe 11 on most weekdays. Because the space and this concept with the tasting room is it's going to also be used for small gatherings. You could have it's not going to have a large space, but there could be art openings or receptions, different kind of events that would be programmed at other times of the day. But the idea is that any given day, there's only going to be a certain number of plates of food, certain selections, and then certain selection of drinks that go with it. So there's not even going to be a tap for beer. There might be one or two selections of wine, but this type of business does not want the college drinking crowd. That's not who it's targeted to, and that's not who would be successful in our type of patrons we want in this.
All right. So, Lloyd, do you have other testimony, or are you open for questions?
I think I'm open for questions.
All right. Members of the board, have questions for Mr. Ogle?
Mr. Chair, this is Cindy Smith. Lloyd, do you plan to have any kind of music there, bands, anything like that, ever for any of the venues or any of the gatherings?
No, the space is probably too small. I mean, the answer is no. We've not considered amplified music in there. So I think probably it definitely wouldn't be any bands. I don't know if someone would try and come in there with maybe an acoustic guitar and do something at some type of or something. That's the only context I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll be real sensitive to sound issues. Again, we'll run a sound meter at 80 decibels, 90 decibels, 100 decibels, see what kind of sounds that makes in the adjoining units, and we'll soundproof as needed. But the answer, no, absolutely not. It's not going to be a venue. There's not going to be live music ever programmed there. If there's something incidental to a reception, it has to be acoustic. We wouldn't allow amplified.
Okay. All right. Questions from other board members?
Yeah, this is Lynn Carlson. You mentioned that you would probably have the most 24 people in there at a time. Is that correct?
We believe the seating will be for 24. My guess is the capacity will be a little bit higher than that, but I'm not sure how much higher.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Justin Gross. Lloyd, I think you mentioned your hours of operation 4 to 11. I think you mentioned that being the weekday hours. Is that what you feel would be the same hours for the weekend?
Might run a little bit later on Friday and Saturdays, depending on how many people are in there. We don't picture it probably people being there past midnight on a weekend.
Okay, thank you.
But again, we would probably sit down with the homeowners association to negotiate some of these things. If they, again, they have the power to reject the tenant. They can just vote and reject the tenant. So I think some of those things, as we further refine this concept and look at hours of operations, something that would be addressed to the HOA.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, Lloyd, thank you very much. We will check back with you in a few minutes. What we'll do now, is there anybody that wishes to speak in support of the appellant's request to operate this business? If so, they can have up to 5 minutes. We just ask that you request to be recognized, either *9 or raise your hand through the Zoom app. Anybody here to speak in support? All right, Tyler, do we have anybody out there?
I don't see any raised hand feature.
Okay, I'll just be nice. Going once, going twice. Anybody else here to speak in support of the request? Raise your hand through the app or hit *9 to request to be recognized. Okay, seeing none, is there anybody here in opposition to the request? If so, again, raise your hand through the Zoom app or hit *9 on your phone, and we'll have Tyler and Eric recognize someone here. And you've got up to 5 minutes. We'll just need your full name and your address. All right. Do we got somebody on deck?
Mr. Chair, Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. Mr. Joseph Hartrick indicated in the chat that he had a question, and I just unmuted him. So if he does have that question, he's unmuted.
Sure. We just need your name and address, sir, and go ahead and ask your question.
Locust Street, Unit 209. I recently just moved here last September, I believe. My only concerns with having the place moved downstairs is obviously the noise. I don't know if I misread the chat, but it said 84 occupants, and then I think you folks said 24. So it would be nice to get an official number on that to know how many folks that we're actually going to have in that place at one time. And then also, the late hours kind of worries me on the weekend. Obviously, living here, you know, there's been it's been nice and quiet below with those businesses. Obviously, they aren't open late. So I think opening a business like this is going to be, you know, open till 11 o'clock on a weekday, and then I'm assuming 12 or 1 o'clock on a weekend. That kind of makes me nervous in terms of music, noise, people being drunk, loitering outside when we have a lot of nice vehicles, and also having one of our private entrances right next to the front of that building as well. And obviously we have folks here, I think, with families and kids too. So I think about those things, and I worry about those as concerns. In terms of, you know, in light of COVID and the unfortunate being of everyone who's a small business owner and an entrepreneur having their businesses, you know, either unfold or unravel, that's unfortunate. I don't think that we should necessarily be so close to jump to just fill the space just for the sake of filling it. So in terms of that, I don't think that would be something that I think the neighborhood or the city of Des Moines should worry about. I think we've got 20 bars or places within 900 feet, I think, of this building. So those are just a few of the concerns I have. Sam, I don't know if you had any as well. But those are just a few that I was thinking about that were kind of top of the mind for me that I would like to eventually get answered.
Okay. All right, Joseph, I very much appreciate your comment. Anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition or has a related question about this request?
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, Eric Lundy, Senior City Planner. I unmuted Sam Rizzuti in the event he wanted to speak.
Okay.
He's participating by phone.
All right, Mr. Rizzuti, go ahead. Mr. Rizzuti, I wonder if you have your telephone maybe on mute yourself, but you've got the floor.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, Sam Rizzuti, 507 East Locust, Unit 208. Yeah, a lot of the same, I guess, concerns as Joseph. You know, I certainly love East Village and love the vibe down there and want things to go in that are, you know, kind of different and new and fun. My bigger concern isn't about the nature of what has been presented. It's, you know, possibly kind of how things might morph along as, you know, it starts out fairly quiet and then to try to get some traffic and some activity, you know, maybe music will go in or some things will start to happen, and then it's kind of an issue to, you know, kind of slow that or halt that, you know, and understanding they have to abide by the association tenants and that kind of thing. So, you know, if you know, if it's going to stay pretty tailored to what's been described, I could, you know, see that and be in favor of it. I'm just concerned about what it might morph into as time goes by. And so just those are my couple thoughts.
Sure. Excellent. Okay, well, very good thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Rizzuti. Anybody else that wishes to speak in opposition to the request? And we'll kind of do a going once, going twice. Staff, do you see anybody else that has raised their hand or has requested to speak in opposition?
I do not.
Okay. All right, we'll kind of do the same thing since you have it. Any speakers who are neutral that just maybe want to share a comment, whether it's for or against, but maybe some food for thought. Again, just ask to be recognized, *9, or the raise your hand on your Zoom app. Going once, going twice. Okay, all right, so now the board can ask city staff any questions that have come from that testimony, and I'll just go ahead and kick this off. There was a comment made that while the applicant had said, I might have a couple dozen, 84 was meant. I'm guessing that might be the maximum allowable under city code, but could staff address if just how that works?
Yes, this is Bert Drost, planner for the city of Des Moines. The building code will dictate the maximum occupancy based on the square footage. I am not exactly sure what the square footage requirement is per unit. I know a lot of assembly uses, they need 7 square feet of floor area per chair. So it is possible that 84 would be the maximum number that the building code would allow.
Okay.
But as you heard the applicant say that their intention is to have a maximum occupant load of 24, I believe that would be something that the board could, if you so chose, to add a condition that states there should be no more than 24 patrons at any time, or some other number that you feel is fair.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd probably want to look at understanding what the maximum allowable would be. 24 people could just be, one wedding party and then the place is full. I don't know. So I guess I'd want to know in a little more detail, what is the maximum occupancy that would be allowed as the tavern use, which this be classified as. Because as you referenced, Bert, if that's something for that the board might want to consider as a limitation, I'd kind of like to know what kind of range could be looked at there. Okay, any other questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, this is Cindy Smith. Is there a way to add a condition for music to make sure there's not live music, if that's part of the discussion?
There certainly can be, but and I kind of say this with a smile here. Live music, what does that mean? Live music is me singing a cappella. That is live music. Now then there's amplified music, which means using a microphone or using an amplifier on an electric guitar. There are also instruments that are not amplified, like percussion instruments. Somebody could have a drum and cymbals in there with no microphone, and it would be very loud. Then there is music that is just through some tiny speakers, like background music. That could still be considered amplified music. So I think we have to be careful what we're talking about, because amplified music can simply mean a little boombox CD player that sits on a counter. That's truly amplified music. So do we want to limit live performances that are amplified? Do we want to say no live performances of any type? Or do we just want to say comply with the normal sound ordinance, and within these conditions already set, they can't disturb the general, tranquility of the neighborhood?
Mr. Chair, this is Lynn Carlson. On that, I know we have sound permits that we with allowed music. Is there something we could say that there'd be no music that needs a sound permit?
That could maybe be a good start on that to limit that larger kind of music cluster that could occur when somebody wants a sound permit.
Chair, members of the board.
Yes, go ahead. Please announce yourself.
Sue-Ann Donovan, Neighborhood Inspection Administrator, Zoning Enforcement Officer. There are no permits required for sound inside of a building. There are requirements that sound not escape the building so as to cause a noise disturbance. So I don't think you want to start having them get permits for sound inside of a building. It's not in the code.
Right. And Sue-Ann, if the sound can't escape the building, I know we've had situations before, if there's undue vibration, if there is, and certainly by decibels, all those can be considered sound escaping the building, correct?
Correct. The ordinance does say that a business should not allow sound to escape the building. We do now measure by C weight, so that captures the bass that causes so much trouble.
Yep.
So it's enforceable that way.
Okay.
So we don't need to add anything on that?
I don't think that there's anything that you can add as far as permits for sound inside of the building.
Thank you.
We have enforcement tools if it becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yep. Good question, Lynn and Cindy, and thank you, Sue Ann, for helping with how the ordinance works as is. Any other questions that the board has for staff? Okay, seeing none, then the way the process works, then we will let the appellant have up to 3 minutes for closing comments or to reference or rebut any comments that have been made by others. So Lloyd, we can give it back to you.
Thank you, Chairman Mel. I would just emphasize that, well, first of all, our current configuration has seating for 24. That wouldn't necessarily mean that your actual occupancy could be more than that. I'm guessing the 84 people occupancy is maybe what Duck Monkey has right now. And part of the build out, you know, you're still going to have some type of kitchenette area. You're going to have some areas that are not available to the public. So that's going to reduce square footage of available space for the public. So just by function of the code, I'm sure that number is going to be somewhat below 4. How much, I don't know. Having said that, again, back to this type of business and the authority of the homeowners association has over it, you know, I think all those things, hours of operation, and if there are issues about number of blends there that we give flexibility to work with the HOA on that. I do just hate to just throw out a number and then have it locked in. I'd like to work with the HOA and just see what kind of, you know.
Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. Is that all, Lloyd? You good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go.
Question of the appellant?
You have a question of the appellant?
Yes. This is Lynn Carlson.
Okay, yeah. Since Lloyd hasn't really had time to, quote, sit down, sure. Lloyd, I think Lynn's got a quick one for you.
Have you run this is a really novel concept to me. Have you run a business like this, or is this something brand new?
I've certainly not run a business like this. Our consultant is a consultant to the hospitality industry, and will be heavily involved in bringing in and managing staff for this type of operation. This tasting room concept is a newer concept. You're starting to see them on the East and West Coast. This is the first one I think we'll see here in the Midwest. And but yeah, I'm not. I provide a lot of legal counsel to bars and restaurants, but as far as running them, I'm not the guy to run this.
I think it's an exciting concept. It just is. Somebody mentioned if it doesn't take off, that you might do something else because you have this license in place. My
response to that would be that if in fact that happened, again, the HOA is in a position at any time to come in and ban the tenant or ban the patron. If it was a new business, a different lease, that would have to be brought forward to the HOA for approval. Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate the issue about drift and how sometimes if you get someone CUP, that site's kind of locked in. In this case, because we're subject to declaration, I think they'll be in a good position to police that if we start to drift too far away from what our original stated business is.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you both. Okay, we'll go ahead and close our public portion then and go, unless, was there any other questions for Lloyd? Did you have something, Marvelous? Nope. Okay, we'll close the public portion then and go to the board deliberation. So, any thoughts by the board members on what you've heard?
Hi, this is Nathan. I'm reassured. I mean, I think the discussion about the homeowners association and their role really should provide a lot of reassurance to us in addition, kind of even on top of the normal zoning enforcement officer determination to bring it back, because this is obviously conditional. But because the only opposition we've heard is from those homeowners, it seems like this is something that could probably get worked out. And it sounds like some of their concerns are theoretical in nature, and the actual plans and presumably practices are going to not necessarily get into a place where it's problematic. I'm pretty comfortable personally with what staff has recommended, but open to hearing what other people think.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Nathan. Anyone else?
Chair, this is Lynn Carlson. I agree with Nathan on that. The homeowners seem like they have quite a bit of influence, and then now they are aware of that. Maybe they weren't aware of that before. So I would make a motion that we approve staff recommendation.
Okay.
I would second that. This is Marla.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Lynn, a second by Marlis to grant the conditional use permit subject to the conditions presented. All those in favor, we'll take a roll call here. Tyler, help us out.
Yep, Tyler Hall City staff roll call for item number 2, Cindy Smith.
Aye.
Marlis Jones.
Aye.
Mel Pins.
Aye.
Lynn Carlson.
Aye.
Dave Garrett.
Aye.
Justin Gross.
Aye.
Nathan Blake.
Aye.
Motion for item number 2 carries 7-0.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate everyone's input on that item and your patience in working with us here for the hearing. So we wish you well in working together, Lloyd, with those in your homeowners association. And I'm assuming that your first official event at your facility, if it opens, we'll be inviting them. So, so I wish you all well. That'll bring us then to item number 9. And item number 9 is a variance request at 3001 Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Dross, planner for the city of Des Moines. Item number 9 is a request to allow retention of more paving within the front yard than what they're allowed. This one is unique in that the building permit for the single-family dwelling was issued last fall, at which time the city was operating under what is now referred to as the retired zoning ordinance. Since the building permit for the house was issued under the retired zoning ordinance, this appeal is also considered under that same ordinance. So you're actually looking at an appeal that is of the retired zoning ordinance.
Okay.
The subject property is located along the east side of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and in between Hickman Road on the south and Euclid Avenue or Douglas Avenue on the north. It was a vacant lot that was recently redeveloped for a single-family residential use. The sketch here shows the green area shows the minimum required front yard area, and then the yellow shows what they've actually paved. The retired zoning ordinance allowed people to pave up to 25% of their front yard area. So in this case, the front yard area measures 1,919 square feet. 25% of that would be 479.75 square feet. However, they paved a total of 735 square feet of paving within the front yard. So they do exceed what's allowed by 255.25 feet. Show the photo. You can see it is a single-family house that their only access is from Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway, which is a major thoroughfare. So they pave the additional parking so that they can turn around before maneuvering or exiting onto Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. This is looking towards the north at the paving, and this is from the other angle, looking towards the south. In the staff report, you'll see that we provided the criteria that the board must base its decision on for a variance. As you've heard staff say many times, the criteria necessary for granting a variance are pretty stringent. They have to demonstrate an unnecessary hardship, which means there's no other reasonable use of the land in question without this variance. Staff is recommending the maximum exception, so we have provided the criteria that the board must base an exception level appeal on, which only requires them to demonstrate a practical difficulty. So, as I alluded to, we have recommended denial of the variance, but we've recommended approval of the maximum exception level of relief. The maximum exception level that could be considered is an exception of 239.88 square feet over the allowed 479.75 square feet. So essentially that would allow them to have up to 37.5% of the front yard be paved. And this would require them to remove just under 16 square feet of paving within the front yard area. And staff doesn't really, would leave it up to the applicant to decide where that 16 square feet of pavement is removed. But that is our recommendation, that the board only grant the maximum exception level of relief. We did get 3 cards back, all in support of the applicant. And I'll let you browse these. In the meantime, while you're reading these, did anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions for Bert? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. This is Cindy Smith. Hey, Bert, that area there is kind of an industrial area, isn't it? Can you talk about surrounding properties a bit for us, just so we kind of get an understanding? It's kind of unusual to have a residence right there.
Yeah, it is in an area that used to be zoned C2, which is a general retail, highway-oriented commercial district that did allow for single-family residential uses. It contains, I believe, an auto sales, or this area contains auto sales, contains some warehousing. A little farther to the south, it contains a senior, I guess, about a half mile to the south, it contains a four-story multifamily senior housing. But closer to the south is the city, or the Des Moines Public Schools bus barn. You're familiar with that at the corner of Prospect Road and Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway.
Right, so are there any other houses around there?
On the west side of the street, it's primarily single-family residential, but the east side, there is, I believe, one other single-family house on that side, but you're right, it is predominantly commercial. But I'd also reiterate that when the house was built, the single-family use is an allowed use, so.
Okay. All right.
Is single-family use allowed under the current, if it were a vacant lot right now?
So under the MX3, would a single-family house be allowed to be built under the new zoning ordinance? Is that the question?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. And the MX3 district would allow for a 1 household unit.
Okay.
But it would have to be on the upper level of a building, so it would require a residential unit to be part of a mixed-use development.
Okay.
But again, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, at the time the building permit was issued, it was a permitted use, so.
Yeah. So the existence of the house is not in question here.
Correct.
What I'd like to go back to is, could you show us the actual parcel site plan that showed the building footprint? And I think in yellow, you showed us how it was paved. Is the yellow area what was paved?
Yes.
What I'd like to see is within this approved plan that Cooper Crawford and Associates drafted up, did that not show the alignment of what the driveway should have been like? Because I think I see a little curve there that says DR driveway. Yeah, right there. So where would the boundaries have been before? Were those delineated earlier?
I would have to go back and look at the building permit.
Because what I'm getting at is if the dimensions and the shape of the driveway was on a site plan and that was approved, why in the heck did a builder or somebody else deviate from that on their own? And maybe that's a question I'll ask the applicant.
Yeah.
Because it looks to me like the driveway has, at least on the northern northwest boundaries, been drawn out. Why was the driveway not oriented more with the garage itself, like a straight in shot? Was that existing curb or utilities or something?
Well, I believe they were wanting to have the ability to back out and turn around.
Okay. So the original drawing that you've kind of covered up, teased you a little bit, would have shown that, it looks like. Maybe.
Yeah, and this was submitted by the applicant. This isn't something staff prepared.
All right. Well, then I'll ask the applicant as well. Okay. But what would have been submitted there, the original plan was approved then to allow for a turnaround. Is that correct?
Well,
or do we know?
The city doesn't require permits for driveways.
Right.
So I don't know that the driveway was necessarily reviewed at the time they were reviewing the building permit.
Wasn't drawn out. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I kind of suggest the city ought to maybe require that if that's an important thing.
Yeah. And under the new code, we do get more of that information than we requested under the retired code.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, any other questions for Bert? Okay, seeing none, then what we'll do here, we'll transition over to the applicant. The applicant has up to 10 minutes to present their appeal. And we just need to start with whoever's going to present their name and address. And they just need to hit *9 or raise their hand through the Zoom app to be recognized.
This is Brandon Reed. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi. This is Brandon Reed with Tanzanite Homes. I'm the operations manager. I live in 908 Northeast Outer Ridge Circle, Ankeny. I am the operations manager, like I said, for Tanzanite Homes. Main reason we're requesting that is, again, was more of the safety so they could turn around and access MLK as busy as it is, as opposed to backing onto MLK. A couple things with the reason that's offset a little bit is that was the existing entrance that we use. That's why that's offset, and there's actually a power pole on the front there that would also hinder straight out, but
gotcha.
That's why that stayed there. But yeah, the main reason is just for their safety purposes, giving as much as they could to back out and turn around and drive straight on to MLK and stuff there. The original, I don't think it really showed, the site plan didn't really show anything for like a turnaround and stuff when we did that and stuff there. So that's really the only reason there. The only other thing would be is when we extended that, I don't think we knew that percentage. I don't think we were running off the right what was included in your front, you know, the 25% allowable. I don't think we quite understood that, I guess. So that might have been the other reason why we got where we were with this. But I think getting that driveway over there, even trying to make it tight over there, I don't think we would have even hit the 25%. But yeah, our proposal is just, what we have there is 735 square feet right now. And I think, yeah, you guys had mentioned that you were represented that you would allow the 37, just over 37% paved area in that front yard, which we would still have to cut off, I think 15 or 16 square feet.
Okay.
We obviously requested we could keep that extra, so we wouldn't have to remove anything more, but again, we're gonna go by the recommendation.
Okay. All right, Brandon, will you take some questions?
Yep.
Okay, any questions from the board? Okay, all right. Sounds like everybody's pretty quiet. Brandon, I've just got two quick ones. Do you have a lot of experience with home building and site plan development?
He's still muted.
Oh,
there.
Can staff help us there? Brandon, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. My question was, do you have previous experience with building homes, doing site plans, that kind of stuff?
Yep. I've been a superintendent for KRM Development, Tanzanite Homes for the last 12 years.
Okay, cool. And have you built homes in the city of Des Moines before?
Yeah, we have several homes we got going all in the city of Des Moines right now. Yep.
Okay. Well, the city's had requirements for limitations on the amount of paving allowed on properties for many decades. So I just kind of want to remind you to maybe kind of keep that in mind for the future.
Yep. No, definitely.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Brandon? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. So do we have anybody here who wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request for the variance? And again, just *9 on your phone to ask to be recognized, or hit the wave your hand button, raise your hand button on the Zoom app. Anybody here that wants to speak in support? Okay, going once, going twice. Would there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition? Same process. Ask to be recognized. Seeing none. Anybody that's neutral on the item that still would like to speak? Okay, seeing none there. Do we have any final questions for city staff from the board? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Okay, and I think, I don't know if we didn't have anybody in opposition, so we can, I think we go ahead and go to board deliberation. Judy? Okay. All right, so board deliberation, then we'll close the public portion. So board members, what do you think on this request?
Mr. Chair, this is Cindy. I'd like to comment that I understand the test for variances. I believe this is an unnecessary hardship. Knowing ML King, I believe the speed limit down that street is probably 35, but if people go 35, that would be a compliment for folks. It's a very heavily traveled street. There's a lot of businesses along there. As Bert indicated, where this new home is located, it's surrounded by what I would call commercial type entities. I know there's some residences on the other side of the street from there, and it's a pretty wide street. I think it's a 4-lane street. So I guess I would prefer to decide with the homeowner a bit, in that I think they would need a spot to back out. Otherwise, if you try to back out onto ML King, that's going to be very dangerous for not only for them, but for the folks traveling up and down that street. Mm-hmm. So I would go along with letting them keep what they have there, just for those reasons.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
This is Justin.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. I would just echo what Cindy said. I think this is a safety issue. I work pretty close to where this house is, and the traffic, the speed is pretty fast, and it is a 4-lane. I would be inclined to go along with the variance for the reasons stated by Cindy.
Okay. Other comment? Okay, I might just throw in quick my own comment here. It's been made, some concerns been made that yes, they want a maneuvering area so that they did not have to back out into the street. And I would understand that. That could have been brought forward to city staff at the time that the site plan and the building permit was developed. They could have asked for a variance at that time, and staff could have worked with them on that. That did not occur. From talking with the applicant with a direct question, it appears they just weren't aware that there were requirements on limitations for paving. So, in essence, I feel like we're making the variance argument more than the applicant is. I would be inclined to support the exception level because I think that the paving could have been designed correctly to probably remain within at most the exception. Those are just my comments.
Mr. Chair, this is Carlson. I understand those comments. I think it would have been nice to see a picture where that pole is. They said that caused them to not go straight in. I'm really torn. I mean, we're talking 16 square feet.
Yep.
We see that pole. Where's that pole at?
Probably right. Bert's on it there. He was.
Okay.
Go back one. Bet you it's right there.
Well, that really didn't affect it that much unless there's a reason you can't be that close to the pole.
Well, if they'd come straight out of the driveway, I bet you that they would have run into that pole and then.
Okay.
Yeah, because the driveway is a little curved coming to the south. So, any other comments, or would there be a motion, one way or the other?
Mr. Chair, this is Cindy, and I'd like to move to for the variance.
Okay. All right. Would there be a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second that.
All right. We got a motion by Cindy, a second by Justin. All those in favor? We'll go through roll call.
Roll call here, Tyler City staff. Marlis Jones.
Nay.
Lynn Carlson.
Nay.
David Gare.
Aye.
Justin Gross.
Aye.
Nathan Blake.
Nay.
Cindy Smith.
Aye.
And Mel Pins.
Nay.
So motion fails, 4 nays, 3 yeses. 4-3.
Okay.
3-4.
So what we can do here, the motion for the variance has failed, but we can consider a supplemental motion. Is that correct? Judy, can you help us there?
Yes, you can.
Okay. If we want to consider a supplemental motion, does that have to come from a member of the majority that voted nay?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This is Nathan Blake. I'll move the staff recommendation for the exception level request.
And I'll second that. So we've got a motion by Nathan, a second by myself, Mel, to grant an exception level request. All those in favor of granting the exception level request will go through roll call.
Okay. Nathan Blake.
Aye.
Cindy Smith.
No.
Marlis Jones.
Aye.
Lynn Carlson.
Aye.
Dave Gare.
No.
Justin Gross.
Aye.
And Mel Pins.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay. All right. So that includes item 9. Now we have a couple other business items to take care of. That concludes our actual hearing agenda. Those that were at the meeting last month, if you've reviewed the minutes, if somebody wants to make a motion who was here last month and a second, and then we'll vote on approval of the minutes, Of course, if there's any changes, please note so.
This is Marlis. I will move to approve those minutes.
I'll second that. So motion by Marlis, second by Pins. All those in favor who were here last month, we'll go through roll call. If you weren't here, just say you weren't here.
Nathan Blake.
You actually need 2 months.
Or, well, yeah. So whoever was here in February, yes.
Aye.
Cindy Smith.
Aye.
Marlis Jones.
Aye.
Dave Gare.
Aye.
Justin Gross.
Aye.
Lynn Carlson.
Aye.
Mel Pins.
Aye.
Motion to approve the February 26 minutes pass 7-0.
Okay. Okay, now, this is the most complicated part of today's hearing. On an annual basis, we elect officers for the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And we have 2 officer positions. We have chair, and then we have vice chair. So if the chair is not available, then the vice chair would chair the meeting. And as we've seen before, sometimes if neither are available, then we can always pass it around to other members. But I think for the procedure here, we'll take nominations. You can self-nominate, or you can nominate others. So we'll open the floor for nominations for Board of Adjustment Chair for the next year.
Mr. Chair, this is Cindy Smith, and I nominate Mel Pins.
This is Marlis. I will second that.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations?
I'll nominate Nathan Blake for vice chair.
All right.
Why don't we take them one at a time?
Yeah, do.
One position at a time. Thanks, Dave.
All right.
I move to
we got a
close.
nomination for Mel Pins. Is there any other nominations for chair?
Move to close nomination.
All right. Is there a second to close the nomination?
Second.
For chair. Okay. All right. So we got Mel Pins for chair. I would have been more than happy to share that with anybody, but all those in favor? Go through roll call.
Justin Gross.
Aye.
Dave Gare.
Aye.
Lynn Carlson.
Aye.
Marlis Jones.
Aye.
Cindy Smith.
Aye.
Nathan Blake.
Aye.
And Chairperson Mel Pins.
Sure, why not? with such great support, I can't say no.
Motion
Okay. All right.
to
Thank you
approve
very
chair
much for your
7-0.
confidence. Look forward to working with you all in this coming year as colleagues. And so now we'll move to the vice chair position. We have nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Nathan Blake.
I'll second that nomination. This is Cindy Smith.
Mr. Chair, who was the first one?
Nomination.
Mr. Chair, Eric Lundy, who spoke on that first one?
Me, Dave.
And you got the second there on that nomination for Nathan. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, I'll make a motion to close nominations.
I second that.
All right, we got a second there. Okay. Then I guess we'll go ahead and vote on vice chair.
Right.
We got Nathan nominated. All those in favor for Nathan, we'll go through roll call.
Cindy Smith.
Aye.
Marlis Jones.
Aye.
Lynn Carlson.
Aye.
Dave Gare.
Aye.
Justin Gross.
Aye.
Mel Pins.
Aye.
And Nathan Blake.
Also aye.
All right.
Y'all.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Well, we all work great together, and that's what's most important. So look forward to serving with everybody over the next calendar year, whether it's by remote or in person. So this hearing is officially adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
Stay healthy, everyone.